Hello, how are you guys doing? I assume you're here to get paid, right? Because this is artist pay, right? So we're going to be talking a little bit, and we have some special guests here that we are going to introduce. First of all, my name is Daniel Moye. I teach here at Full Sail. I'm in the DAD, or the Digital Art and Design program. And I have been in Orlando, or been in the Central Florida market for about 35 years. I'm an advertising guy. I've worked for myself. I've worked for Walt Disney World, and currently right here at Full Sail. I love to teach you guys and just tell you what I've learned and some of the things that I know and brought to the table. With us, we have Kim Alpert. She's a director of creative technology at DCI-Artform. She's a 2013 Hall of Fame inductee. The end.
Hello.
That's Kim. We have Culley Bunker. He's the owner and senior artist at Skulley Effects. He's a 2011 Hall of Fame inductee. We have Alex Menendez, owner of Instinct Films, a 1990 film graduate. And Tim Naylor, co-founder of Creature Arts and Mechanics, 2014 Hall of Fame inductee. So we're going to talk a lot about artists. We're going to talk a lot about how to get paid. Is that good? Yeah. All right. So start off, and I guess we'll just start off with the ladies first, in a way, if you don't mind, since you're on the end and you're the lady.
You want me to answer the whole question on how to get paid?
Well, we'll just we'll move it around, and feel free to to jump in at any time. I mean, I'll kind of direct it to each person, but then you guys kind of jump in as you feel free. So Kim, how do you price when you really love a project and you're passionate about it, and you don't really know what to do with it? It's your baby. How do you price that?
How do I sell my babies? No, that's a really good question. And it depends on how much it's your baby. If you made it by yourself, if it's an idea that's collaborative with different people in a company. And I'm somewhat unique, I think, from these gentlemen with me, that I have kind of a day job, and then I also own my own company, and I'm a working artist as well. And I keep my two lives pretty separate, and I kind of like it that way, because my art gets to be what my art wants to be. I don't really have to answer to anybody. I don't have to take projects I don't want to do. Like, that's my art. And then I have my day job, which I love and is passionate and is my commercial art. At the end of both of those, the biggest thing is how much time is this actually going to take? So I'm a very fair pricer when it comes to that stuff. I'm not going to give kind of willy-nilly pricing. If something's going to take 100 hours, it's 100 hours. Now, am I going to do 100 hours at $150 an hour no matter what the project is? No, because there's some projects that I love, and I love the client, and I love who it is and what it's about, and that scale is going to come down a lot, especially if there's somebody that doesn't have a budget to afford what I consider like a median price point, which would be at about $150 an hour. It's a higher price point if it's something that's going to be really difficult, really taxing. I definitely know has a much bigger budget, and they're going to need a lot more from me. So it's a pretty variable thing, but at the end of the day, mapping out time, to me, there is an affordance there that's really important. IP, intellectual property, is another really important one too. Am I selling something that someone else is going to turn around and resell? Is it going to inevitably help them exponentially more than it's helping me? Is the IP itself, is the concept more valuable to them once they've purchased it? And that gets into a much different structure. So I think that's as eloquently as I can not answer your question.
That's very good.
Okay.
Any of the gentlemen want to jump in, or do you have anything else to add? Yes? No?
Well, for us, we at one point in time we had about 30 employees, and so you look at a project and you really desperately want to do it, and sometimes the financials just don't work for you to be able to do it, because as an employer, your accountability needs first to be to your employees. So, we can't change what they're getting paid, even though the client on the project that, is your heart's passion that you always wanted to work on since you were a kid comes across, you still have to defer to that stewardship. If you don't want to change your employee's rate. And so you can choose as an owner to kind of, maybe the hit you can take yourself, but maybe not. So it becomes, I think sometimes the larger the structure you are and you're within, the more that stewardship of, the artist rate that you have to care for your people, the more that comes into play in being able to decide whether the project can actually come through the facility or not. So your love for the project sometimes has to be, secondary, unfortunately, at times. And you have to go through the process of really evaluating whether or not it's healthy to take on, because you've got people that have to feed their families and such. And
sometimes in that case, it's advantageous to take a loss.
yeah,
You try not to do that very often, but if it's a passion project you're in love with the client as well, you can use that to your advantage.
Yeah.
I mean, we basically broke even on Anomalisa, and it ended up being a passion project, but it's up for an Oscar, so we got lucky.
Yeah.
In this situation, we all kind of own companies, so it's a little different than maybe what you guys are asking for. I know you probably all would want to own your own company, but as artists, asking what to get paid, it can be really difficult. I found that I always tried to overpromise, underpromise, overdeliver. But also it was really difficult to try to come up with a number of what your time's worth, especially when you really want the job. Do you go lower than you think you should? Do you go higher and negotiate? It becomes kind of a cat and mouse game that you just need to work out and feel out as well.
Let me throw my hat in the ring real quick. I'm a contributing photographer for Getty and for the Associated Press. And because I'm not a full-time employee, they don't have to pay my insurance. But because I'm a stringer for them, there's different rates for different jobs. So I might shoot a professional football game at one rate, and then I'll shoot a celebrity or a musician at a different rate. And the offers come in, and the offers are all over the place. They're never the same rate, and I can't understand why that is. So it comes down to me saying, do I want to give up my time, or do I want to give up this day away from my children to make X amount of dollars? And sometimes the cost, if it's somebody that I really want to shoot, then maybe, yeah, it's worth it. But if it's a job that I really couldn't care less about, I'll pass it off or I'll decline. With the contracts that I have, there's 3 different contracts for, let's just say, for Getty. There's a stringer contract, there's a hybrid contract, and there's a contributor contract, and I have 3 different contracts. So if it's something that they really, really want, they're going to call me and they're going to say, we're going to give you X amount of dollars for 20 photos. Now you put those 20 photos up, everything after that, it's a 50-50 split. That's one contract. Another contract is a hybrid contract, which is, I won't get totally into all this, but there's different options that I have on the pitching end, if you will. So it's up to me to decide what I want to do at that particular time. A few years back, I shot a Super Bowl. I was offered a credential through a wire agency, and it was my choice whether I wanted to contribute or whether I wanted to shoot for the agency. Knowing that the Super Bowl is one of those rare occasions where I'm going to make money on the photos forever, I decided I didn't want to take the pay to play. I didn't want to take the day rate. I wanted to take my chances on selling spec, which is not normally the way you would do it. If you remember, it was the Super Bowl where the Saints kicked an onside kick coming back from right at the beginning of the third quarter, and I was able to capture the onside kick. Move forward 3 months, I got a phone call from AP saying that there was a guy that was writing a story in a book on that particular play. And basically the sky was the limit on how much I could charge for that photo. I'm not going to tell you the exact number, but it was high. It was over $5,000 for that one photo. I was able to sell that photo and make back much more than I would have working for them and giving them all my photos that day. So the point of the story is, when you pitch a job or where somebody comes to you, don't just look at the paycheck. It's not always just about the paycheck and the time. You have to look far-reaching. Are you going to get royalties on this job? Are you going to get, who owns the copyright on this sort of stuff? So, it might be a passion project, but make sure that it's going to pay off for you in the end.
That's good. We're going to have a lot of varied
risk
answers.
reward
That's
type
going to
of
be good. You had something else?
It's a risk-reward type of
Okay.
deal.
Yeah.
Sometimes you weigh the risk over the reward. And sometimes you win, sometimes you lose.
Exactly.
So this kind of takes me to another question is the idea of making art versus making work, which kind of leads into, you know, how do you separate your feelings on this? We kind of tapped onto it a little bit, but how do you separate your feelings? How do you get that away? Maybe start with Culley this time.
I found over the years that it's pretty easy to separate your feelings when you have a family and a business to run. You know, whatever the client wants is what you give them. It's been difficult a lot of the time. I'll take a lead and go in a direction and really fall in love with something, and then show the client, and I exactly 180 from what they wanted. And you just have to suck it up and turn it around and get them. You know, you get them what they want, and if it's something you're passionate about, make it for yourself. Keep that version for yourself, and you know, maybe if it's allowed, publish it or put it online, and you know, for your personal reel. But you know, one's got to eat, so client comes first.
That's good. Anybody else?
I mean, I kind of have a philosophy for like my work and my art, and like when I'm at work, I'm the instrument of someone's vision. So, you know, yes, I'm a creative director, and oftentimes, like, my input and my ideas are part of that vision, but I didn't invent the product. I didn't invent the campaign, maybe. So it's not in totality my vision. So I really am just an instrument that's bringing it to a new place. I'm bringing it online, or I'm bringing it to software, or I'm bringing it to this environment. But I'm really I'm that conduit that like brings it into this thing. And for me, that's created a separation that I can really live with. And then with my art, I'm the conductor. Everything else, those are my tools and my instruments, and it is my vision, and that's everything.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and the two cross paths, and sometimes it gets a little sticky. I think earlier on in my career, there were a lot of independent projects that I took on that felt like my art, but were definitely my work. I think I've been lucky to be able to really keep them much more defined now.
That's good. Anyone else?
Sometimes, you know, the production requirements and constraints of the schedule hamper. There's been many times where it's like you're sitting with a team of people and we can totally make this better if we just had 3 more weeks and we could do it right and we can solve it and everything will look so much better, and you just can't. And you just have to kind of like break away and leave that aside. And it kind of is like the abandoned child that you don't forget about, even though the production continues. And then my personality is, let's get back to that. Like, how do we go back and bring that forward, or try to, you know, fix that thing, or what could have we done to make it better? So we worked on a project where we had to create a digital version of Michael Jackson. And when we were done, we had a little bit of time, and everybody on our team said, it still doesn't look, let's go back and look at it again. And we rebuilt him again, because we just, even though it was good enough for that production, it's still not where we wanted to be. So, you know, sometimes there's times where you can go back to it, and other times, you know, you can't. So
That's good.
I don't know if this is pertinent or not, but I find when critiquing things, like you're watching something online or a commercial or TV show, and you look at that and you go, oh man, they did a horrible job. You actually don't know the specifics of what happened, so it's hard to judge somebody not knowing what they were doing. They could have been up against the time. The director could have changed everything at the last second. I find myself critiquing things and go, oh, that's just a horrible job. But when that happens to me, you turn it around and you're like, yeah, maybe look bad, but you don't understand what happened behind the scenes.
absolutely.
So take everything with a grain of salt to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
That's good. So how about life balance? I mean, I've owned my own business for 15 years and run other businesses, and you know, you will have to work a lot, guys and girls, okay? So, you know, working 40 hours is not really true sometimes. It's really more like 60 to 80. So how do you get that balance? How do you be an artist? How do you create in this corporate environment that we have in America, where, you know, you've got to work. So we'll start with Alex this time.
I've been doing this for over 30 years, and it's very difficult, especially with 2 young kids, because you don't want to miss the times that you can spend with them, but at the same time, there's always that worry in the back of your head that if I decline this job, they won't call me back. And that's something that sticks with freelancers all the time. Oh my God, what am I going to do? What am I going to do? So you need to network with friends. You need to basically collaborate with other people that are in your industry, and play to their strengths. If I can't do the job, I get a phone call. I'm out of town for these next 2 days. I'm going to give it to him because I trust him. I know he can do it. I run it through me. I'll still basically get the job. I know that he's competent and he'll get the job done right. So what you need to do is you need to build yourself a network, not a social network. It's not like how many Twitter friends do I have. You want people that you're going to leave your business in the hands of. And you need to trust these people. No, they're not going to steal your job. They're not going to mess up your job. That's the first thing. The second thing is, I take photographs every day. I'm constantly on the road. I travel about 8 or 9 times out of the state of Florida every month. I'm gone. So I have to know ahead of time where I'm going to be, if I can piggyback another job when I'm traveling. So it's not just the sense of, I've got a job, I shoot it, and I come back. Know that when I'm shooting, maybe 15% of what I do is actually shooting. I've got to archive, I've got to edit, I've got to get the client their images, I've got to color correct, and the archive, it's just nonstop. There's so much stuff that you don't realize goes into this business. All at the same time, I have to invoice, make sure I get paid, and cover my butt on insurance. It's just a never-ending thing. But if you're passionate about your job, it doesn't really matter because you just get used to doing this day in, day out, and it just becomes the norm. So, the biggest thing I could say is just make sure that you have a network of other collaboratives that you can work with, that you trust, and you guys just watch each other's back.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Anybody else?
I found it's kind of a curve, I would say. When you're young, you're going to probably need to work those long, hard hours. Right. You don't have the experience or the network or the position in the industry that you need to actually afford some time to oneself. I found that when I was younger, I was passionate. I worked my butt off. My leisure time was learning more, and it was great for a very long time. But life changes you. When you get older, your priorities become different. You still love what you do, but hopefully you're in a position that when those things happen, that you can start taking more time off, or you can rely on other people. I was a bit of a control freak for a lot of years, but I'm learning to give it up and let people do more. And it's I have 2 kids, and owning my own business does afford that extra time now and then, and it is a balancing act, a big balancing act. Right now, I feel like I'm not doing enough. Yeah. I've fallen to the other side, where I need to start jumping back in and working harder and more. And every year I come here and I look at all these guys and I'm like, better step it up.
It's interesting. Can I just?
Go ahead, John.
It's interesting that you say that about. I'm still struggling with that. Like I don't know how to. I can't sit here and necessarily project. I have an idea of how to do it, but I'm not doing it every day because it's shifting too fast sometimes. I'm not the best time manager, and I think a lot of creatives are kind of, when it happens and when you're creative, that's when you go and execute. It's not necessarily scheduled, but as Culley was saying, as you get into different positions and different responsibilities, sometimes you got to figure out how to almost schedule it. So I'm trying to learn right now, how do I get better time management to get a workflow and a pattern and a structure that hopefully does it, but I don't know if I can do that. We'll see.
A lot of times
it
is just being dedicated to yourself and disciplined. It takes a lot of time. I agree totally with you. Early in my career, it was work. But then at some point, you just say, you know what? Weekends are off, and you turn everything down and shut it off. So sometimes you do have to maybe set a schedule, but it is
think
tough.
There was a few years where I was working 80 to 100-hour weeks. I was just figuring out new things to do, better pipelines, and loving it. Like weekends, I just go into work and figure things out. But it definitely changes throughout life. Burnout does happen. But I was thinking about it today. I may be burned out, but I still love what I do.
Yeah. That's good. Anybody else? That's good. Great. With no steady paycheck, all right, because now you're working for yourself. There's not You don't get paid every Friday. You know, there's not someone keeping track of that for you. So if you're self-employed, you've got to kind of deal with that. How do you pay for this creative fix? You know, we want to be creative. How do we keep going? How do we pay for that? You know?
Are you saying with a job?
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
You gotta go to work, buy the stuff to make the art.
Okay.
You gotta put the fuel in the machine, keep it going.
Okay.
You know, that's why I have a day job. You know, no one's gonna pay me to make weird art about body hair, where you come to a gallery and you like shave fake stuff. Like no one wants that. No, I don't want them to. I don't want anyone to want that. I don't make art. Most of the I mean, I make art for people to buy, but I don't always make art for people to buy. You know, when people ask me like, well, why do you make this stuff? And no matter what I make, whether it's paid, whether it's in a museum, whether it's in a gallery, whether it's in a garage, whatever, the whole purpose to me of being an artist is to make things to inspire conversation. So the whole act of seeing the art to me, like that's my payoff. So I need to be able to afford to build the things that I want. Otherwise, these conversations will never exist. Like that's the whole thing. So I work really hard, and I got really good at my job because I chose a job that I also really love, you know. And it's just one life to me, you know. When I finally kick off and they make some kind of weird tomb out of my house with all this weird stuff, it's not just going to be my art or not just going to be my day job stuff. Like it's all my work, and both my works have to respect each other, you know. And one has to pay for the other, and the other one has to pay for the other. So my artwork pays with my time that it sends me to go do my day job. My day job pays for my art by giving me money to buy weird stuff to build weird installations. Mm-hmm. Like that, they have to be in sync, or they're not going to have, you know, the capability of doing anything.
That's good. Anything else?
Yeah, I was going to say, when you're a freelancer, try not to put all your eggs in one basket. Don't just count on one client that's a good paying client to keep coming back and coming back and coming back, because eventually they'll change agencies, or they'll just, you know, basically decide they want to try somebody new. So I was fortunate enough where when I was coming up, I had a lot of we were doing a lot of medical training, a lot of books, DVDs, that sort of thing. And they were some really big contracts, and I was very comfortable. But in the same time, there was some downtime between the videos and the books that we were doing. And I would take that time to do my passion projects, stuff that I really wanted to do, or something that I would kind of replicate. If there was something that I really liked or wanted to try, I would take my own money and do that. And what that enabled me to do was play a little bit and be more free. I didn't have a client pressing their thumb down on me, telling them this is not going to work, that's ugly. You know, do your own thing and use that to further your career. Mm-hmm. What I was able to do is take some of my passion projects, boxing projects, surfing projects, right? When GoPro was coming out, do some really crazy stuff. And that got some interest by some other clients, and one, you know, word of mouth led to another. And before you knew it, that turned into AAA. I've got a pretty large AAA account now up in Lake Mary, all because I was able to do some remote, you know, suction cup some cameras to the sides of cars and do some different looks that they hadn't seen before. It was nothing new. To me, it was just playing. But to them, they liked the different look, and that just opened another door. So don't put all your eggs in one basket. If you can mix it up a little bit, you know, that small client that you might not think is going to pay off down the road, you know, that guy might get a job at a big agency 3 years from now, and he's going to remember you. And that's kind of how, you know, that expands. Go ahead.
Also, don't limit yourself. You know, you want to do one thing, but you don't know this other thing might interest you more by accident. You know, if you limit yourself to only doing one sort of job that you really like, modeling for 3D or video editing, and you don't know if you want to do color, or, you know, experiment with that. If you get the job, take it. You know, do your best to do it. You know, sometimes you have to, what is it, sink or swim?
Yeah.
Jump in over your head. But if you jump in over your head, make sure you can swim, because if you do mess that job up, you might not be able to get another one. It's a small industry.
Know somebody else that can help you.
Yeah, well, that too.
Once again, that's your network.
I don't know if this is part of the question, but I find, you know, you have your main job which pays you, but you also have your secondary job, which is when you're not working, you should be working on getting work. So treat it as a job. Make hours that you that you schedule yourself to find a job. Like, I need to do self-promotion today. I need to, at 1 o'clock, I'm going to find companies online to contact, and then I'm gonna call these people, and then I'm gonna write down who I talked to, what they said, and if I should call back and when.
You gotta hustle.
And put it in your calendar. You need to hustle. Make it a job. You're paying yourself. You're not being paid, but you're paying yourself.
And don't forget to invoice, honestly.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
not joking. There's some times
No.
when we forgot to invoice. They're not going to pay you if they don't have to.
Yep.
And you got to schedule time for that too. It sounds stupid, but you have to invoice.
And then you have to follow up and follow
Did
up
you
and
have
follow
anything?
up.
For me, I always find that I'm always doing research on what other people are doing,
Uh-huh.
because there's always someone figuring out a new idea or new style, and if you're only focused on yourself all the time, which you might have to do for a season, but always having, like every time I kind of get tired, I wind up like going to CG Channel and check out like how people did this, because there's always cool stories on behind the scenes how they did this. Here's this commercial, how they actually shot this, how they did this effect, and I always, even though it might not be in my wheelhouse, I still want to learn about it because I find that other people are what's inspiring back to me to keep me interested in it. I actually love coming and talking to students because I see raw passion, I see raw interest, thirst for knowledge, kind of that quest for understanding of what does our day-to-day look like. That actually feeds back to me. So even coming back to Hall of Fame is kind of like, okay, well, I kind of remember who I was, 20 years ago, much younger, a lot more hair, et cetera.
Yeah.
I'm with you, brother.
Yeah, that's right. So we talked a little bit, Alex. Actually, Alex kind of touched on it a little bit. But now that you're freelancing, now that you're out on your own, and you're not working for anyone, so no one else is taking care of things like insurance, vacation days, 401k. What's that? So how do you deal with that? What do you do with those things? Do we just ignore them, or do we have remedies for them?
No. We have one thing that I learned early was when I left Full Sail, I went to work for a company in Fort Myers. And the guy that I was working for some reason, asked this kid to do a trick on a half pipe. The kid fell and broke his leg. Sued the company, sued my boss for they settled for $15,000. Right there, it was like, okay, insurance, what is that? I need to get it. So there's different types of insurance that you need. And you can find it if you go to nppa.org, National Press Photographers Association. There's a bunch of different websites out there that'll tell you what you need. Insurance is huge, and it's costing me about $4,500 a year, which is a lot of money. But that enables me to get onto NASA's property and shoot rockets. That enables me to get into the Magic arena and shoot the Magic games. You have to have your own insurance if you're going to be a freelancer. So you have to do insurance. If you're going to buy new gear, you don't need the latest, wham bam, $30,000 camera. You'd be surprised at what you can get with a $5,000 camera. You don't have to spend all your money on this one piece of gear, especially if you don't already have it pre-sold. If you know it's not going to work, why buy it? Just to say you have it, it's ridiculous. I got myself into that trap early in my career and realized I could rent for $200. Why am I going to spend $3,000 a month on whatever? Little things that you don't take into consideration is your car. I mean, I've got a truck and I've got a van, and I've got to use those to get to and from location. I've got to keep tires on that thing. I've got to keep it. I got to make sure I can get to Miami and back tomorrow. So there's little things that you don't think about. Don't spend all your money in one place. If you do happen to land a big gig or a big job, sure, buy something if you need it and you know you're going to use it. But if you don't need it, at this point in your career, I would not spend a lot of money on that stuff. Team up. Once again, it goes back to collaboration. He's got a red. He's got the lights. Let's work a deal.
That's good.
That's good.
Anybody else? So you have to pay for things out there. So do you have about creative space? Where's your creative space? Where do you hang out? Where do you do your art? Where do you do what you do? What's it look like? Let's start down here with Tim.
Well, so this is weird because I kind of did a full circle. So I started at ILM back in 2001, and it was the Lucasfilm buildings. And then we moved into the Presidio in the city of San Francisco. And then when my business partners and I started our company in 2012, we found out that the old ILM executive building where the theater and the stage were, that there was rentable space. So we grabbed that as fast as we could, and it was weird because we were in the same halls of where our careers kind of started. So you're kind of like coming back to roost, which is really kind of odd, and you kind of seeing ghosts of people walk down the hall. And it's a really fascinating building because Pixar got its start there. So there's a hallway where all the Pixar executives started. There's the door where Photoshop was created. Our war room is where Jurassic Park was birthed. You know, in terms of in terms of computer graphics history and the foundation of the industry that I work in, we work in kind of like the Garden of Eden, if you will, the kind of the start of it all. So that kind of helps, but you forget about it. But then we want to do a tour for someone. You come in, you help, you do the tour, and you kind of go, well, this is where this was done. This is where this. Oh, Empire was mixed in this theater, and this is where Jedi was done, and you kind of go, oh, that's right. I'm kind of in this really cool place, which helped create all these images when I was a kid that made me want to do this, and now I'm kind of here. So my workspace helps, naturally helps keep that creative going for me. So that kind of
That's
works.
good. How about Kim? We'll move on down with this. Where's your creative space?
I like you're mixing it up now.
Yeah, how about that?
I feel like I have a lot of creative spaces, to be honest. So my office at DCI is in Chicago, and then I have a second office in the Milwaukee facility. Until recently, I had a studio that I rented for about a year that was constantly set up. So I had like an edit bay there and all my VJ gear out, painting, and kind of fine art studio space there as well. Pretty sizable location. And then I just realized that I wasn't going there very much because Chicago gets really cold, and it was kind of far. So I've just decided dismantling other parts of my house and then having zones just like set up all over. So I have a full room that's just kind of all like my tech room that has all the gear, and this is my clean room in the house where that kind of all stuff happens. And then I have my like muddy room, and that's where the easels are all set up, and there's just drawers and drawers of art supplies and boxes of bones that I've made out of clay and that kind of stuff. And one of my favorite things about kind of pushing me more to get the space in my home and make it set up and have it set up all the time was, I think it's a David Lynch quote where he says, to get 5 good hours of painting, you actually spend 4 hours setting up and only 1 hour painting. And then that's why you have to have a space that's just like ready. Like when it strikes you for your stuff, for your vision, like you need to be ready all the time. If it's work, if it's like commercial work and that, like you have to be ready at all times to facilitate and to make it happen. Like if you're pushing pixels, you have to always be ready to push pixels. But the other side, it needs to be ready for you.
Culley, where's your space?
The office is where the actual work happens, but sometimes I just don't. I don't come up with a lot of the ideas there. For some reason, I find being creative when I jog, just losing yourself in a song. I come up with many ideas for things that I might do in the future, for a music video I'm working on, or something I might need to write a treatment for directing. I came up with like 15 ideas for the last music video I directed just jogging. I don't know why. You can find your creative space. It doesn't have to be actually where you work. That's where you finish your creative. It could be where you finish your creative space, but your creative space should really just be in your head.
Nice.
Good.
I like that.
Alex?
Lately, it seems to be on an airplane. Traveling so much. Honestly, it's with the boys. I take the boys to school. I pick the boys up. So when I'm at home, I do most of my editing there, or online searching, looking for the next project, looking for pitching, chasing down invoices. But when I actually get to the airport, I just put the headphones on. I don't listen to anybody, and I basically get online, get on the iPad, whatever, and I just look at whatever the latest, greatest Twitter feeds are. So and so did this or so and so did that, and it just sparks my creativity when nobody's bugging me, and I know I'm going to be on an airplane for 3 or 4 hours. I don't really want to talk to the person beside me, and I just kind of lose myself there, and it works.
Yeah. So a lot of times we just have to have some place we got to go to. I'm like with Kim. I said you have to have a place ready to go, so that work can get done. Otherwise, the preparation's going to take forever. So if it's all ready, get going, and it's a place you can go and just get to work. If you're working at home, if you happen to have a home space or a space that you're not it's not around a lot of other creative people. How do you feed that fix? How do you have that social creative interaction that we need? And if they're not there, if you are at home and you're by yourself, if it's in solitude, how do you feed that social creative interaction? Anybody want to jump in on that?
I'll do that one.
Go.
Go for it.
So even though I'm in the Chicago office, most of my team is in our other office. So even in my day job, I'm kind of like a lone wolf. So the biggest thing is to find your community, and your community doesn't have to be people who work doing the same things as you or at the same company you're at, but whatever your community is, like, you have to go to them and talk to them about what you're doing. Even if they don't understand it, or you're like, oh, well, that's a nurse. Like, what's she gonna know about my animation woes? Like, explain it to her and like what rendering is. And if she doesn't want to hear it, then maybe she shouldn't be in your community. But like, you'll identify with that, and you'll find that other people want to talk to you about what their experience is, and it'll kind of open up. I'm a huge advocate of going out to shows too. As a working artist, the biggest thing that I can do is go to shows to meet other working artists and connect with them and talk more about that. And I try to host things too. I think that's, as I've gotten older, it's been very, very apparent. It's harder for folks to meet each other. It's weird to make friends when you get old because it's creepy. I don't know if you guys go through. I don't remember it being creepy when I was in college, but it's like, once you're like grown and you're at a job and you like meet a new person, it's weird to be like, hey, what are you doing later? They're like, going home to my life. Like, it's weird. So I started kind of like hosting stuff at my place so that I could get other people to meet each other and kind of be a facilitator to that. So that's where most of my conversation, my dialogue, and my connection comes in.
That's good. Anybody else?
Just fellow coworkers at the office. We have meetings, creative meetings now and then, coming up with ideas for the projects we're working on or for different new ventures. And I have to tell you the truth. The Hoff group has just been amazing. I have an idea or question or bounce something off the group, the Full Sail Hall of Fame Facebook group. Get a lot of good feedback from there, and even a teacher like Mac Rutan, who's a teacher, taught me years ago. He really helped me through this last music video. He put a lot of work in on it, and gave me a lot of good tips. So you never know what it's going to come from. Just try to find it and use it to your advantage.
Good. Alex?
I've got a couple of producer friends that are always out looking for new stories, or they're digging. They're in the news world, and they tell me, like, not really what's trending, but where things are starting to fall to. Right now, it's politics. Everybody's getting into politics. You got Trump, Hillary, everybody, all this crazy stuff going on. So they kind of encouraged me to go out and dig a little bit and get some different type of stories, or things of that nature. And that's, I'm home a lot, to be honest with you. I do stay home quite a bit, and I always have to kind of go out and dig. And when other people can, give you ideas, that's very beneficial. So, otherwise, I search a lot of stuff on the internet. I have a couple of different websites that I regularly, go to see what they're doing. And I'm sure you guys do the same type of thing. You guys have your favorites that you go to. And when something strikes you as being really, really cool, it kind of gives you an idea or makes you want to do something similar to that. So, it's hard being, it's hard being alone without coworkers that you can collaborate with all the time. I kind of wish there was more. I had more people that I could hang out with to give me, fresher ideas. Maybe I'm an older guy and I'm kind of stale. I'm comfortable in what I do. I shoot my sports. I see the same photographers at all the games. We get along. We're like our own little group there, and that's kind of how it goes right now.
And Tim's in the Garden of Eden, so that's
Yeah.
ideas just come.
To the
Pretty
wall.
much.
Yeah. Do you have any other places that you go to, or is it?
No, my job is so team dependent that really exercising that out has to be within a lot of the team construct. Ideas happen all the time.
Right.
And I really like what Culley said in terms of your creative space should be in your head. So, we might, send an email to each other, or, just message one another about an idea, like on a Sunday. Thought of this, we should probably try this on Tuesday. it's not work because, it's more of inspired ideas, and you just want to you just want to get it off your chest, get it out there. And then I try to actually have a different community out of work too, that, I know some lawyers, I know some, people who do totally different jobs, and just have a conversation about what their day is like. You get different ideas, different needs, stuff like that too. So let's try to find a balance as well.
That's good. We talked about it a little bit, but how about marketing yourself? Culley used to kind of started off on that, but how do you market yourself? How do you keep yourself out there so that you do have that constant work coming in? Or
Well, right now, most of my work has come by word of mouth for years, and we've never really tried to market too much. I mean, we keep a website. It's not very updated half the time. Do post stuff on Facebook, but I'm really not sure if that gets us any work. I guess it mainly keeps people, us, fresh in their mind. That's the closest thing I'm coming to right now. Although we're trying it. We're in a downtime right now. We're between jobs, so we're really trying to get new reels out, new website, and try to do a marketing push, because we've never done it, and we want to see if that actually generates a new line of work that we're not used to. But usually we're making overhead, and the work just comes through the door to a certain degree, which has been fortunate, but it hasn't really been huge. So it's one of those, we're just grinding, basically. We're not getting ahead, we're not falling behind, but basically we just keep your name fresh in somebody's mind. That's, and I just did that last week. I made a bunch of calls. Hey, how you doing? Because when they go to, hey, I need a job done. Oh, I just talked to Culley yesterday. Let's give the job to him. You're fresh in their mind. You're the first thought. So, which I guess means fresh in your mind.
good. Anybody else?
I mean, that's a
Yeah,
huge one for me, for sure. Just leaning back at me. I mean, I'm work in marketing, so that's a lot of what I do. So, I mean, for me to market myself, in both of my worlds, it was really important. I wanted to be, I mean, as early as I was in my career, it was always like, I want to get to be a creative director. So you want to be a creative director, you got to market yourself as all the things that lead up to that. So you have to be a good designer, you have to be a good employee, you need to be a good team member. So I made sure that those were always the things that bubbled to the surface when people remembered me, and that I lived that ethos day in and day out in all the teams and all the places that I went. And as far as my art and like my identity as an artist, being able to craft what that looked like online to me was really, really important. And very, very early on, I understood the importance of really curating what that is and allowing that real persona of me to be granulated in a way that had absolute truth and that could be consumed by people to understand who I am and what I'm about, and at the same time didn't feel invasive or like polarizing, so that it could be something that they'd be curious about more than anything else. Because I'm kind of an in-person person. Like I always say, I do better in the room. My ideas are good, and like if I send you a presentation, you'll like it. But really, I do well in the room communicating. So that's been kind of it for me.
Okay. How about any others, gentlemen? Marketing?
My marketing's
Work just
horrible.
comes.
It's one of the things that I should put at the forefront, and it's like the number one thing at the rear. Every time I get started, I get into such a funk with what I want to do that it's easier just to put it off till tomorrow. And that's been a major problem that I've had for a couple of years. I don't push. I'm comfortable with the contracts that I have, and I know that they're going to be there, so I kind of get complacent, which is bad. But at the same time, I need to have a conversation with you, and let's get something started.
Me first.
That's good. Do you have anything, Tim? Or
I wish I could say what Kim said.
We talked about time management, and time. Creative people have a tendency not to be able to do it, and I see this with students a lot of times too. When I first started teaching, I thought everybody could manage their time like I did, and nobody can. So it's like, oh no, what do we do? So how do you manage your time? How do you get your job done? How do you get the work done? Kim?
I think what you said is as important as managing your time is managing your expectations. And having that realization that like, why aren't you managing your time the way I'm managing my time? That's an important moment, because you would get very frustrated with me because I'm sure I do not manage my time the way that you do. And when you allow people that space and assume that they're going to be doing the best they can, and like that's just as important. Just as important. I'm not a good time manager, for sure. And I try really hard to be. I try to schedule really dumb stuff in my calendar. I scheduled meetings for my coworkers the way that I wish they were scheduled for me, where I sent them some documents and then I scheduled a meeting on their calendar, and the location of the meeting was in their mind. And then the subject of the meeting was read those documents I sent you. And they were like, what is wrong? Like, why would you do this to us? Like, this is weird. Like, don't ever do that again. They're like, don't ever do that. And I was like, I wish someone would just do that for me. So I don't know. You know, I'm such a quote machine. Like there's like a John Cleese thing that is about like scheduling appointments for like brushing your teeth. Like, I need to spend this hour making faces at myself in the mirror. You know, that, to me, that stuff is the stuff that I am worse at planning my life into my life. If I'm left alone, I will just like devolve into like drinking oatmeal out of a straw and sitting at like many computers around me and like drawing
Finally, someone
something.
understands me.
What?
Said finally, someone understands me.
yeah, it's not really that glamorous. Don't let my sweet specs fool you. So, you know, the stuff that I have to plan is like, I'm taking the dog to the park twice today. Like that stuff gets in there, and I have to make it happen. But honestly, Full Sail taught me a lot about time management, and I deal better having a schedule. And I feel like I fought that because I think more just because they tell you like, you're a creative, you must not like schedules. But like, schedule me, like schedule every hour of my day. Like tell me everything that I need to do, and have one of the items be like staring blankly. But schedule it. Yeah. You know, like have it in there, because that's important.
That's good.
I find well, you're a business owner too, but I find as a business owner, I've learned to
Kind of.
Being able to get it done perfect and being able to get it done good enough so you can get paid are two different levels. Your personal projects may be something you want to make perfect, and you can do that. But when you're working for somebody, they need to have that done in a certain amount of time so it makes it profitable. So sometimes most of the time you have to give it up before you may be willing. But one thing, I hate to say this, but one thing I've always been good at is knowing what good enough is. So when it's good enough for the client, it's good enough for me. And that makes you make money. So, you know, you may want to make it perfect, but, you know, getting paid is what we're talking about.
You don't get paid for being late.
Can I ask a question to the audience?
Go.
Can you raise your hand if they teach you the concept of a burn rate in your project?
Burn rate's important.
What? Did you say something?
I said burn rate's important.
Yeah. They were like,
Burn rate.
forget about a burn rate. I don't know.
Yeah, we're not-
No. So that's a concept. I like remember like the light bulb went off about like all these freelance projects and all these things that I was doing, and I was like, this is so frustrating. And then when I really got into like heavy software, they talk about the burn rate, which is how many hours and how much time you're spending against the total budget or the total allocation of the budget into this specific part of the project. So you'd have your allocation for creative, for development, for, you know, user testing, like all of these things have, you know, a price assigned to them and then an hour allocation assigned to them. And then as you're going through the process of creation, whether it's client changes or whatever it is that's messing with your burn rate, you can then identify what these things are that are causing you to have all of this hemorrhage of time and this hemorrhage of money. And that's, for me, one of the greatest things that I've been able to learn and to put against my life. And because I'm really cryptic and weird, like I've taken that philosophy like into other things where I'm like, is the burn rate of this friendship making me happy? Like, you guys are laughing. That was sincere.
No, it's serious.
real.
I need to think about that one.
That was like very, like I was being very.
Well,
I have a lot of friends that I love my friends.
Oh yeah, it's good. I basically live my life on a calendar. It's blocked out, and I know every single day that I have the boys on this day. I've got to take them to school. I've got a job on this day. So those blocks fill up pretty quick every week, and before the end of the month, it's like a rainbow. There's just so much going on. So one thing that you said is, you're talking about burn rate. It's very important that when you sit down with a client, and you guys are going through a contract or going through the scope, that you be fair to yourself. And if you think this job is going to take you 70 hours, don't give them 32 because that's what they're budgeted. You need to sit down and man up and explain to them that it's not just me shooting, it's not just me editing. I have this, I have to travel, I have phone calls, I have to ship stuff to you. There's other things in here that you're not seeing. You think the end delivery is what you're going to get for this price, but there's other things that you don't see. If you go ahead and book that job for the 32 hours, but your calendar at the end of the month shows 70 hours that it took to do that job, you've lost 40 hours off of your life. And that doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're trying to take care of kids, get to baseball games, invoice, do other things like that, that 40 hours disappears like that, and you have no idea where it went. So be true to yourself and be true to the client. Be fair to them and let them know, this is how much it's really going to cost me. And don't be shy when it comes to that, or you're going to be the one that suffers.
Yeah, and if you're getting a job from a client, investigate every avenue. Make sure that the things they deliver are what they say, and what they say you're doing is the same as what they said in the beginning. I recently had a job that totally blew up, and it went it didn't go well. The job was not what it was, a lot bigger than it was supposed to be, and the recourses that I should have found, I didn't have because of the time of getting the job till the contract locked in. I was stuck doing something that should have been investigated fuller, and it really hurt. It ended up being 10 times the work that it was supposed to be.
And it happens to everybody. It's going to hit, everybody will experience that once or twice, and that's how you learn.
If you're a business, even maybe if you're taking on a personal project, figure out how many hours it's going to take you to do it, and then double it, and that's your budget.
So one of the things I want to jump into before I forget, because I'm
Go for it.
sleepy. So what you said about that 70 hours versus that 32 hours, that was a mistake that I made a lot in early freelance jobs, like for sure, because I was like, oh, you want me to do a music video? Cool, yeah, I can do that in like a day. Like, no. And something that I've learned, I am not, Culley, I cannot do that in a day. Something that I've learned that's really changed for me, it's been many, many years now that I've kind of figured this out, and I think it's not rocket science, but when I'm bidding and when I'm doing contracts for stuff, with my work or with my art and with my personal projects and stuff, I will never change the hours. I will always change the rate, and I will always show the discount. So, in particular, there's kind of like a brand chef, a celebrity chef in Chicago that I do a lot of work for. I've done his personal identity. I've done websites for him, press kits for him. Like, he's done work for me. We've worked together in a number of different jobs. He's an awesome guy and a huge advocate of me and a really great supporter. And when he needs work for me, I'm not going to charge him this. He's brought me so much other work. I'm not going to charge him the same thing as somebody right off the street because, like, he's family at this point. But I never give him hours that are untrue to the hours the project's going to take. It'll say, oh, you get X discount, and then therefore your rate is this number. So he can see it. But he knows that the hours are the same because he's sitting there at the end of the day and he's being like, oh, well, how many hours does it take? How many hours do I have left? And when I started looking at projects that way, everything all of a sudden became a retainer, and everything became something I could budget for because I knew there's only so many hours in a day. Like, there's only so much of that. So it was really easy to put that against where I needed to be to break even. And when there was a while I was just doing my business, and that was really how I operated and how I stayed afloat, because I knew what the bottom was. So the rate would never go below this because that's what kept the lights on. And then everything above that, then that was like, that's funny money. Like, that's great. That's bonus time, And to me, I live on bonus time. Everything at this point in my career is bonus time. Every day that I'm not sweeping hair up is bonus time. Like, it's awesome.
Just know going in that when you're meeting with a client, they're meeting with you because they like what you're doing. Otherwise, they wouldn't be sitting at the table with you. And that contract, just because it's written out exactly like this, and that's what they present to you, doesn't mean that's what you have to stay with. You can sit there and barter back and forth. And, you know, some of the photos that I shoot, they hire me and they want to, is it going to be a licensed photo? Is it going to be a work for hire? Or is it going to be a stock photo? So there's different usages. I've been able to start building for social. If they want to use those same images for a print piece, and they also want to put it on their social media sites, there's an upcharge for that. And they're like, well, what are you talking about? And I'm saying, well, you're getting more exposure for this image. The rate that you are paying me, I don't think is fair to me for you to get this. You're basically using it twice, which is fine. As long as they know going in. Did that to two clients thus far, and they didn't even balk. They were like, no, that's cool, add $1,000. So when you go in, you know, don't be this little timid character and just accept what they offer you. Give them a true rate, give them a true cost of doing business, and just try to be, you know, bend a little bit, collaborate with them, but you don't always have to do what they say before you sign the contract. Now, once you sign the contract, you know, keep your end of the deal up for the rate that you're based on. If you're halfway through the project and you know that you're way over budget, there's a reason for that. You're either really slow and not so good, or they've changed something, they've changed the scope on you. The time to address it is then, not at the end of the project where you guys are hitting each other. All right?
Yeah. That's great information.
You need to teach the visual effects industry this process.
Yeah. And you know, time management is one of those things we need to really think about, and scheduling that reflective time is important. I think, you know, I tell my students all the time, sometimes you just have to schedule that time just to reflect and find out who you are, you know, and what is it that you want to accomplish.
One of the other concepts, I don't want to forget it because it's a good one. It's one that I live by. One of my absolute favorite people said this to me. He talked to me about a very early job that he had, and he said, you know, don't forget that they got to pay you for those shower hours. And I had never heard that term before, but that's the time you spend thinking about a project when you're not at your desk, you're not at work, when you're literally in the shower thinking about, like, and when I get to work, I'm going to build that box, and it's going to have this kind of weight to it. Like that, you got to get paid for that time.
That's
like
right.
That's what you're doing. You're not thinking about, like, how am I going to get my grandma some new shoes? Like, you are, like, that's on the clock time. You're not, no. So don't forget about that. Don't discount the value of that time. You know, it's important. You're not going to wind up shower hours. You're not going to work 40. If you came to Full Sail, you already care too much. You're not going to wind up working 40. So be real with yourself about it, and make sure you find an employer that's going to be real with you about them appreciating your time. So when you're working at night and then you have to go to the dentist at 11 a.m., it shouldn't be a question if you can have the time.
Yeah.
You know, you are the master of your time.
That's good. And speaking of time, we're going to transition to you guys. We want you, the students, to have an opportunity to ask your questions. I mean, I had a few questions here that at least hopefully kept us going and kept us in a good direction. But I'm sure you have some questions that you would like to talk to the panelists about. And there's some microphones going around. And so just raise your hand high so that we know where you're at and we can get the microphone to you. If you're online, direct your questions to the online monitor, and they will make sure that that's taken care of. So if any questions? Just one up here. Just hold your hand up there for a minute, and somebody will be right with you.
Oh, hello. Okay, so this is for one or all of you. I was wondering if, coming out of Full Sail, did you start at an internship? And if so, was it paid? And if it wasn't an internship, what was that first job like?
Yeah.
I'll
go real quick.
It's going to take a while.
Yeah, when I graduated in 1990, and the requirements to graduate at that point were to do 3 months of an internship, and then you actually graduated. So I'd set myself up prior with a company down in Fort Myers, Florida. They were one of the only companies that would, they were doing underwater video, and that's what I wanted to do. So I set myself up with the internship. The first 3 months, they paid me minimally, and then it was up to them at that point whether they wanted to bring me on full-time or not, which they did. And for me, because I'd picked that particular company based on what I wanted to do, and they were doing what I wanted to do, it wasn't just a random to fill the position. It was actually something I wanted to do. it turned out to be a win-win for me, and I stayed there for 7 years. So the internship did pay off.
I have one of these nightmare stories. It's not really a nightmare. It got me to where I am, and I appreciated what I did because I think it made me a better person and a better artist. But I got out of school, and it's kind of a long story. I'm going to try to make it quick. I found, at the time, there was these, SGI were the premium boxes. They were $50,000 for a box. And I found a place down in Miami that had these things with Flame software, which is like $500,000 back then. So you get down, I found this box that is $250,000 at least, and something I really wanted to do. And I found out that artists make, when they know it, $100 an hour. And this is in '98, so that's an insane amount of money. So I'm like, I'm gonna go there. And I went down there and I ended up interning for these guys over a year for, I think I got paid in lunch. I lived out of my van and I slept under that computer for a year. I didn't even have a manual. I touched every button just to figure out what it did. I learned how to build that thing and rebuild it, and I did demos and I just lived it.
Nice.
And it was miserable, but I also was fun. Sometimes the struggle is worth it. And I know it's tricky with college these days. It's so expensive. I was lucky. I had forbearance. I had parents help a little. I paid them all back eventually, but you know, it's tough, and I get it. But there's still, to get where you want to go, you know, you have to make sacrifices sometimes. And I'm really happy that I did it. You know, living out of my van in Miami for almost a year. So.
That's good. Anybody else?
I,
Go
I'm
ahead.
sorry.
Go ahead.
I don't need to answer.
You sure?
And yeah, it was.
We had one up front here.
Right here? All right. Say you're coming out of school or you're new to the industry. How much like leeway would you have in negotiating how much you're paid? Like say you're working for a company, like you're an employee and you're not necessarily freelancing. Like they decide when you come in and they decide what you work on, but how would you negotiate for them? How easy would that be, and how much freedom would you have to do that?
Probably not a lot.
Coming straight out of school, you have probably zero negotiating skills. Because, I mean, there's the 10 people beside you and the 10 people over here. So if you're in that room, I would take what you could get and then move up later. That's just my opinion.
If they offer insurance, take it. I mean,
Yes.
that's kind of what it is at this point.
If they offer lunch at this point,
And then
if you can afford to, you know, put that in, you know, depending on what it is, if it's something you really want to do and it's amazing, you can get that experience and get that networking from those people. That first job I had, not in Miami, but when I got to long story, but after I got to California, some of the first jobs I've had those friends for 15 years. And we've bounced work back and forth to each other, jobs, leads. I think at one point I was a placement agency because I was so busy, I would give friends jobs or give them the leads and they would get the jobs.
Yeah.
there's that chicken and the egg moment coming out of school. You don't have experience, but if I work for you, I'll get the experience. Trust me, can I work for you? No, you don't have the experience. Well, you can't only hire experienced people. You know, there's that dynamic that exists. So if someone offers you something, that's when you say, I'm gonna, and I hate to use the word use because I'm not a user, but you take that, and then once you get in, you make it your own, and use that as a launching platform to go. And maybe it might be the same place. You know, like you were able to transform your internship into a stable job and environment and learn, which is just, I mean, that opportunity is awesome. Maybe it's somewhere where you go and you learn the ropes a little bit, earn your chops, and then you transform out of that.
I find it, sorry.
I made when I first started in film, I made exactly right above the poverty line for California by like 10 cents. Like if I like got an extra, like if I had milk in my coffee, it was like, oh my gosh, I might go broke. But it was ILM. There was no negotiation. Like, I've got 10,000 people that want to sit in your chair. Here's the one moment in time where I'm going to offer that you be the one in the chair. Want it or not? And I was like, sign me up. I don't know if I can pay rent. I'll figure it out. I just want to get through the door. And when I do, the responsibility then shifts to you to really use that experience for yourself to help propel your career. And it might be at the same place, it might be going somewhere else, but then it becomes yours. So if they offer, negotiating isn't always what you have to do all the time in your career. Sometimes it's about the opportunity and the nature of the job. I've taken jobs before because I knew either the position was different or the nature of what they wanted me to do was going to propel me enough for the next couple of years, even though my pay didn't really go crazily increase. Maybe it was a cost of living adjustment, but it was the company or it was the project or something else that I wanted to do. So maybe negotiating might have turned them off. So you have to weigh it in, but getting into it, it's just, yes, thank you. Yes.
Yeah, there's something that I want to address with that because I think it's a little bit different to some of the stuff that we talked about. You're talking about a salary negotiation. And a salary negotiation is really different than when you're talking about a contract for a project. And definitely, like, know what you're worth, go on the internet. There's all this, like, stuff about, like, this job makes this much in this state. Like, that's really, it's valid, you know, and you want to be on the scale. That doesn't mean you have to be in the center or at the top, but just, like, somewhere visually on it that's fair. And you need to keep in mind, you know, where you are as a person, what kind of person you are. You know, are you a person that wants to fight and negotiate, and maybe they'll give you some more money, and then every day after you start, people are going to look at you and be like, I expect she's going to be great. I know she wants a whole lot more money. And they're going to look, and they're going to feel differently about you because you pushed and you beat them up and you wanted that. You know, and that's who you'll beat. That will be the identity of who you are. Or are you the person who's going to be like, that's fair, and then you take it, and then you work super duper hard, and then in 6 months you're like, yo, I think I should get a raise. Look at all this work that I just did. Will that first raise put you in a better financial situation after you've proven yourself than you would be able to get into before you started in the negotiation? You know, I always recommend to young folks that are in that position, ask to be reviewed at 3, 6, and 12 months, and potentially look to get bumped up sooner. If you know that you're more billable, then try to negotiate and push for a rate that, like, is very hard to command when you're fresh. Because you don't want to be that person. Because, like, offices are just not fun in a lot of ways, especially when it comes to people talking about you. So, you know, people are going to know that. And then, you know, it's never a good fun thing because money makes people uncomfortable and weird and creepy.
I find, at least in post, that it becomes very nomadic. And staying one place is far and few in between. So when you move to the next job and your reel gets a little better, you can raise your rate to the next job. And that's how you get raises faster, at least in post. I hate to say it, and I hope my employees aren't listening, but the best way to get a raise is to leave the place you're at. Find another job before you do, but especially your first job. You probably don't want to stay at your first job for very long.
I don't fully agree with that.
That's my industry.
Yeah. You had a little sharkier.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's, I think that's a little sharkier. I don't know if that's the same for you,
do you
but I feel like,
agree?
Unfortunately, the industry standard is that's how you do it.
yeah.
Because it's changed. So when I first started, you could be at a VFX house for years and do okay. So I was at ILM for 9 years. I never asked for a raise, but got them because my philosophy was very much like yours in terms of I'm going to work my butt off. I'm going to understand. I'm going to master my craft. I'm going to understand what I'm doing, and I'm going to build it with excellence every day as much as I can.
Yeah.
That's going to get, someone's going to recognize that sooner or later.
Mm-hmm.
And then the industry transformed. And it's really become what Culley has said in terms of if you're in the visual effects world,
Yeah.
the way to do that is to, unfortunately, it is to leave. Because what's happened is in our industry, instead of having consistent work project to project to project, you get laid off, and then you've got to go find the other gig, which might be in some other city. And so the culture has become, I wasn't a lead, but now I'm a lead on this, so now I want to be a soup on that. And you kind of, and the nature of how the industry has changed has almost created that in a way. So.
Yeah, our advertising industry was a lot like that too. I mean, if you wanted to grow, you left.
You left and then came,
And then you
maybe came
went
back,
and-
maybe not, right?
and then you might come back, which is always fun. Yeah, any other questions?
So we have a question from online.
Okay.
I'm over here. This question is from Yodi in game design, and it's for Kim Alpert. The question is, do you think it's possible to make personal, thought-provoking art for a living?
Oh my God, yes. Yes. So I want me to say more? Is a big ol' yes okay? I can't say that I would choose to not do my commercial marketing stuff if you really told me I could have both. I think I might go bananas, like super duper cuckoo, if I just made art for me. But I speak with folks all the time and have the pleasure to know folks, quite a few folks, that just live off their art, and that's what they do. And sometimes they do stuff where it's, it'll be a brand project, maybe it's a wall inside a shop, or they're gonna do a new line of shirts for so-and-so and that kind of stuff. And, they'll do some commissioned work for brands or for people. And some folks that just do art, that just do installations and have to go after grant money and get funding, or do, self-funded work or crowdsource work. Like it's absolutely possible. I think it's more possible now than it ever has been before, because there are so many different outlets to create and sell merchandise and things like that as a creative, which is really exceptional. But it really just depends on how you want to spend your time. I think that's a big part of it. Being an artist, one of the reasons I came to Full Sail was to learn marketing, because I, as an independent artist, was having trouble giving all this money to galleries for my marketing, and that's a long time ago. And I wound up falling in love with the creative medium of making people feel emotions about something that is abstract, like a brand, and in turn kind of revolutionized what I do as an artist. And that's going to be part of it. So if you think you're never going to be like just in your studio making stuff, you're going to have to go network, you're going to have to go meet gallery owners, you're going to have to make postcards, you're going to have to get a website, you're going to have to do marketing, you're going to have to do invoicing, you're going to have to do billing, you have to do accounting, you have to be like all those parts. It's a business. Like all those other jobs still have to be done. So you have to kind of decide, where you want to be, how much time you want to give to each one of those jobs to make the reality every day look good. From like the time you wake up till the time you go to sleep, that time, that's the pattern. That's it. That's all that there is.
That's good. Anybody else? We agree.
Consensus. Great.
Anyone else?
Yeah, this question goes for pretty much anyone that it applies to. Oh, it's over here. Hey.
Oh, there you are.
Well, like, how you guys were talking about how in the beginning when we're choosing our work, we really don't have much of a decision of where we can work and who we can work with. Like, this is more geared towards like a musical standpoint, but like, how do you guys work in like working with people with styles that you're not usually used to? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, how do you usually go about like letting your creative flow, get into that project that you're usually not making your mind think that sort of creative way, but they're used to it, but you're not really used to it. So how do you sort of work with them if they want you in the job?
On the photography end of it, because I shoot for a lot of different magazines, it's better to talk to the art director. In this particular instance, I'm taking the music and turning it over to magazines. Talk to the producer, talk to the art director, and ask them what they're looking for. And if they have examples of prior jobs that they're trying to emulate that they can show you, that would be great. I could shoot for the New York Times one day, Rolling Stone the next day, and Cat Fancy Magazine the third day, and everybody's going to be different. So what I would do is just try to kind of pick their brains and see what they're trying to do, and then do your own version of it. They're going to love it or they're going to hate it. And at that point, you just collaborate with them and see, if they love it, great, you're going to get another job. If not, then you have to kind of sit with them and just figure out what you did wrong or how you didn't understand what their view was, and try to learn, as quick as you can what they're trying to get out of you. And for the music industry, I don't know, I think it's kind of good to work with different genres or artists, because they're going to open up you creatively. They're going to kind of maybe open up a side of you that you didn't know you have, and that might lead to something really glorious. So I don't know, just
I think there's like two kinds of creatives in a lot of ways. There's folks that have kind of like the ability to do commercial art, where it's kind of like, give me a style, I build in that style, we do a thing. This is this thing. This is my blue period. And then there's folks that they're like, that's their style, and every single thing they produce is that style, and that's cool. And a lot of folks have a really cool style, and that's really great for them that they have that one style. That's not my style to have one style. I like I like working for brands. Thank you. I work for a lot of brands that are not products that I would necessarily use or was like into, but you get really immersed in it. You get immersed in like the culture of like, this is what that aesthetic is and this is what that style is. And you know, you have got to do it. And it's something I think in my practice, I've continued to refine and need to continue to even evolve and get better at, is that process of really immersing myself and getting to understand that style and getting to understand the nuances of it and the levels and the detail of it, so that when somebody asks me to produce it, I can really be absolutely on point and make the best that wants to be had. You know, I think it's similar, you know, you spend a lot of time researching.
Definitely.
Anyone else?
I'm trying to think of something to say.
When, if ever, is it acceptable to be paid in exposure?
Indecent exposure? Sorry.
The question
Sorry.
was, the question was, when is it a good idea to be paid in exposure? Like somebody says they don't want to pay you, but we're going to give you, you're going to be seen on the front page of X, Y, or Z.
We'll give you a byline.
When it's your work, when it's your art, to be honest. I mean, you got to feel it in your guts. Like if somebody was like, hey, Kim, we want your sculpture and we're going to put it in like the lawn of the White House for like 2 days.
I mean,
But you have to like,
Yeah.
that's a personal feeling.
yeah,
I mean,
like,
you gotta feel
that's
it.
amazing.
If it's
Yes.
well, if it doesn't even have to be amazing. Is it gonna
can be-
expose you to something that you wouldn't have before? Are you gonna meet new people? Are you gonna get a new network? Are you gonna?
Yeah.
Is it gonna be something that benefits you in any way? That's the question. Does it
Yeah.
benefit you in any way?
And it's hard
Does the
'cause-
exposure benefit you in any way? If it
'Cause you're-
does, you should do it. But
Young
if it
folks-
doesn't, then back away.
Thank you. So young folks, you're trying to build a portfolio, which makes it really, really hard because people say that all the time. Like, well, it'll be exposure. You'll build a portfolio. It'll help your portfolio.
I still
And
get
like,
it.
you really?
Yes.
Yeah. I haven't gotten it in a while, which is really nice. But I probably have a reputation for being nasty about it because I've said to people in the room that I didn't know very well, well, you can come clean my house. And
I'll be there.
like legit, because the thing is like, that's a thing that people pay money for. Like I will barter, no problem. I bartered a lot of projects when I was just starting out. I still will barter projects with working artists if they want marketing stuff and I really love their work and they got that sweet style, that's their thing that they're always doing. I'll be like, yeah, like give me some of your pieces and I'll do that stuff. I'm not gonna barter with you. And so it's important.
I have something to add. Lost my train of thought. You're so beautiful. I can't think.
Stop.
It depends. Something that I find is when it's a first-time client, that's really tricky. If you're just starting out, like I said, if it's going to give you exposure of any kind that benefits you, you should probably do it. But as time goes on, you get people who ask you to do stuff that you don't know or are acquaintances. That's a no. Like, if you have some experience, you just say no. Like, if you know this person, you've worked with them for a while, and they go, hey, I really need a favor, this is a passion project, then you say yes. You're like, I would love to help you with that because you've brought work to me. You've brought an experience that I enjoy, and I enjoy your work. So here's a part of me for you. So that's just my feeling on it. You know, getting exposure when you don't have any, it's good for you. But when you're already established, if it's somebody that does a lot for you and you've done a lot of work for in the past, and they go, dude, I got this thing, what are you gonna do? I'm gonna help you out.
Good. Anybody else? Any other questions?
All right, so I have a question. It's mostly about your personal life. If y'all don't really want to answer this, y'all don't have to. But
Sweet.
what I'm wondering is, whenever you go from having your family and everything else like that, and you decide to settle down and stuff like that, and trying to balance that with career and being personal, how is it with you trying to move up? You said, you know, and you have to take your experience and kind of move to another company because that's how the industry is right now, correct? That's what you'd say is a fair assessment, more
Depends
so?
on which one you're talking about, but yeah.
So how would you have to almost uproot your family, kind of move things like that, or would you try to keep your family like how your personal work is and your corporate work or whatever? Try to keep that separate as well. You know, trying to balance time with the kids as well as balancing time with your projects, moving on and doing other things. You know, traveling more than everything kind of counts as almost shower hours. You know, sitting in the plane thinking, would that all that all gets accounted for, correct? And how much y'all are trying to put into time, everything away from the family, but trying to balance that. Like, I know I'm probably not explaining it correctly,
I get it.
but
I get where you're going.
it's kind of having that.
We'll probably have different answers because of the different industries.
Yeah. I didn't know if obviously it'd be different for each individual. You know, it's hard for everyone to kind of balance any of that.
I can give you my perspective from visual effects. We do visual effects together, but we're still in a little different aspect of visual effects. But a lot of the industry patterns that happen to the people that I work with will probably have the same effect to Culley's employees is the same. So we saw a shift in the industry where tax incentives in other countries were grabbing work out of California. So before you know it, there was no more effects work in LA for big, studios. A lot of other studios were starting to move and build offices in London and different parts of Canada. I've got 2 small children. Holy crap, what am I going to do? Hours are getting worse. It's difficult. So what we did is because we started a business, we said, if we do service-based work in Northern California, and the type of visual effects work that I do is very different than what Culley does. So we're in a different pricing kind of structure, and so it's maybe what I say might not be applicable to what Culley's business model is. But in our business model, we realized that we couldn't do service-based work on creature stuff because I can't compete with 35% tax credit in Montreal. Just not happening. So we tried to pivot and do technology, and we wound up getting a VFX project. But that wasn't a movie. It was for a live audience as a hologram. And so that was unexpected, but we were able to have 30 employees, local, who were mostly ex-ILM, kind of dealing with the same issues of what do I do with my family? There's all kinds of stories that I can tell you about families being uprooted. It's a fact of my portion of the movie industry. We try to stay local and be a creator of jobs instead of a migrator of jobs. And there's a season where that's worked, and there's a season where it isn't working. So it's been the last 4 years of starting the business, and at the same time doing that, watching my section of the visual effects industry completely transform into something totally different has been really gut-wrenching on my family life, because I had to invest. We bootstrapped with our own money, the company, watching it struggle, trying to keep people employed that are your colleagues and your friends who don't, I've got one guy who I actually cried over because we couldn't hire him, and he's got 4 kids. And I remember the day that a project fell through, and he had already done 9 months away from his family, and he had like 3 weeks before he had to find another project, and he was betting on us, and I desperately wanted to hire him. He was a good friend of mine, very accomplished guy, 4 kids, wanted to stay local, and we couldn't do it. And he had to go out of the country for 9 more months. And I literally cried. Like, I went into the bathroom and I cried, like, I can't believe I can't hire this individual. And so when you get to that level of having to turn people down and, that their dad is gone, it's tough to make those decisions. So it's a challenge to figure out, do I work harder? Because then maybe we can get another contract and I'll pour more into it so that maybe we could hire him. How do you, I don't think I know I haven't figured it out. So I don't have an answer to your question. I have my struggle through it and trying to figure out how I do it. And I might have to migrate my family. And how we do that, it's a lot of things that are changing. Do we pivot and go to VR, which is kind of like gaming? You don't have the tax incentive issues. So maybe we do that in Northern California. Maybe we need to shift. But wait a second, I've got a burn rate. So if I have 30 people and it's going to, how long does it take us to shift and pivot our entire business? Someone's going to get lost there. Who? When? Do we have to go down to 10 people, 6 people? Do we pivot and we become technology company and we just sell our technology to Autodesk? Now we only need 4 people. I don't need an office anymore, and it's just laptops. It's all questions that have kept me in the shower, not thinking about, how do I, make my client's idea cool? It's more of, how do I keep jobs? Should I?
It's a moving answer.
It's a really moving answer. I don't have a solution.
The tax
for
credit thing is such a tricky thing. I mean, write your congressman, get tariffs. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a hardcore struggle, and I was talking to some students in a kind of a more intimate arena earlier, and I was just saying to them, like, whenever you get to your workplace out of school, try to understand the risks, the challenges, the constraints of your employer or your boss as best as possible. Because whether or not you have to become migratory or you're going to be stationary for years, the moment you understand what they're thinking in the shower, where they're going, oh, how am I going to solve this? The moment you start to get in tune with that, you can really start to figure out if there's a solution. And you never know, you might be the employee that comes up with the idea that helps pivot the entire thing. So, I'm trying to figure out how to best have the good perspective with what I'm faced with on a daily basis of, I don't have the answers yet.
That's great.
It's also the bigger movies that does that. So if you try to find a place that does something maybe smaller, music videos, TV shows,
Absolutely, that helps.
Anything that's not big films. Big films just follow the money around the world. People love to throw them money, and they follow it. And who can blame them?
They search it.
But
they search it out.
Maybe that's if you really want to be a family person and not have to move, just research what kind of work doesn't make you a nomadic person.
Yeah, that's good.
Can I? One second.
Say one more.
I felt like I've almost reached like mastery of my craft. Like I think I really got this, and then it all just kind of went poof. And so I'm here at Hall of Fame going, oh, I'm a Hall of Fame guy. But reality, I'm going, I'm not really sure what's next. I kind of got to sit down and figure that out.
Yeah, I have competition.
And it evolves.
Coming from the Ukraine.
Yeah, see,
So
it evolves. You got to figure,
They're
and that's not going to stop. 'cause it's
undercutting all my
technology.
prices.
So this is great information. I hope you had a great time. I hope you got a lot of answers to some questions, and you know how to get paid as an artist. But more importantly, that you've learned something from some excellent professionals that we have here on the board. I want to thank you guys for coming and for listening online. I also want to thank our panel, Kim and Culley and Alex.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Kim.
Thank you. You guys have been wonderful.
I'm Daniel Moye at DAD. Come to Fluid Fridays if you can, and we'll see you around campus. Thanks a lot.